It's that time once again. Engines on, let's go. Welcome back to another weekly episode of The Whole Truth. My name is Wes, and my job is to bring you all the factual news you can handle every week in a concise format. Before we get started this week, I just wanted to say that me and my wife are expecting, as you know, our first child. We went to the doctor this last week and we found out it's going to be a boy. So I'm really excited about that, and I know a lot of people are waiting to find out as well. So there you go. Let's do the RSI website recap. Let's start out this week with the PAX East organization activity winners. CIG ran a contest for the most active organization since the launch of the organization's system on the website and chose 6 winners, 2 each for the categories small, medium, and large organizations. The winning orgs get to send in 3 members each to meet with Chris Roberts at 6 p.m. on April 10th, the day before PAX East. The winners are as follows: small, the Oppression and Aquitas Interstellar Risk; medium, Confederation of Free Traders and Cosmic Ventures; and large, none other than LAMP and Explore. That's XPLOR. Congratulations to the winners. If you guys want to see more information about that, you can check it out down below. We also got a lore update titled This Day in History, The Extraterrestrial Child. Ooh, this title instantly made me think of the Star Child. This is the story of the first child born on Mars to a mother that didn't want to abandon her work to go back to Earth and have the baby. The doctors were concerned with how it would affect the baby and the birth being born there, and the baby girl named Abeni Okan was monitored for weeks before she was allowed to go home with her mother. The baby became a kind of celebrity, and instant fame awaited her. She was followed and hounded by everyone from the first days she was out of the hospital. As Mars developed, the Okan family had trouble evading the people and the press. People treated Abeni as if they all knew her, and it created a strange sense of familiarity for them that caused problems for the family. In her late teens and early 20s, Abeni finally accepted the attention and started making appearances at any place that would pay her. She wasted her money on bad business ventures and generally ran her life into the ground. I won't give away the rest of the story, but it's a decent read if you'd like to check it out. We got another work in progress release this week for the Scythe. This is a bunch of pictures and some communication with internal staff detailing the evolution of the Scythe. There's a lot of interesting bits to these, and if you ever decide you want to see these much earlier, subscribing to the website will get you all of these whips, including Jump Point magazine. It may just be me, but I really do think that the funky seating position in the cockpit is a bit ridiculous. I realize this is because of the anatomy of the Vanduul, and this is a Vanduul ship, but it still looks crazy to me. I hope when these are being fitted for humans that they decide to let the manufacturers in the game put a human-like seat in the ship. Can you imagine how messed up your neck would get flying this thing like this? Come on. This week counts the 8th installment of Dateline's Sessin, the story of Ula Yadav, a behind-the-scenes crime journalist that gets herself into quite a pickle. I've said it every week and I'll say it again, this is one of the best pieces of fiction to come out of CIG. Read it. It's got assassins, man. Episode number 8 of The Next Great Starship came out on Friday, and once again it was packed with great stuff. Aside from the expected highlights of each team's progress, a new community ambassador was introduced. I know, it is weird, and there has been quite an uproar about this because that ambassador is none other than Dan Giesling from Big Brother 10. A lot of people were really irritated that this can't be a community ambassador because the community didn't even know anything about it and didn't select him. People have thrown fits all over the place about this and how they don't want the Next Great Starship to be a reality show like the awful Big Brother show. A lot of folks don't know much about Dan Giesling except from Big Brother, but let me assure you, this guy is a video gaming nerd just like the rest of us. I first found out about Dan by way of my live stream on Twitch TV. I was part of the biggest streaming team at the time on Twitch, and that included people like Lethal Frag. Through this team, I met Dan Giesling and found out that he was a live streamer on Twitch as well. I didn't even know who he was because I don't watch stuff like Big Brother. For those that don't know, Twitch TV is a live streaming site where people stream themselves playing video games. It's a hotbed for esports, competition, but it also has a ton of folks that just stream general video games like myself. So to be clear to the community at large, this is a guy who's familiar with the type of filming and setup of the show and what makes things like this popular, as well as video gaming. And he's also quite a nice guy. He didn't just start doing this stuff for a job recently. He even has a YouTube channel full of Let's Plays. If you want to check it out, there'll be a link, of course, down below. My point is, this guy has credibility as a gamer, and I think if Chris Roberts is bringing him in, we should just give him the benefit of the doubt. From everything I've seen of him and talking to him briefly in person, he seems like a genuinely cool gamer guy. So give the guy a chance. Let's not crucify him until he does something bad, and hopefully he won't. So now that we have that out of the way, let's see what else we had going on in TNGS. The concept art phase is finished, and now we have our final contestants. The two teams that won the community vote to get back into the competition were 3Dingo, who I voted for, awesome, and Talent Corps. Congratulations guys on making it back in. In a special interview in this episode, Dan Giesling talks to Chris Roberts about world building, and Chris describes his favorite things about creating a world. Chris talks a little bit about himself and Richard Garriott and how they both loved creating worlds, and that's his favorite part of this whole thing. It's better than a $200 million movie because it's a fleshed out world that people can actually go into and play around in, whereas a movie is just a small window into a world. Chris also states that multi-crewed ships will be in DFM version 2, and that his favorite ship that he wants to fly right now is the Constellation because it's different than the typical experience you see in a game like this. He wants to be able to get up, walk down to the galley, and have a cup of coffee while his ship is flying through space. Chris said he just wants to make sure that his dream game will match what other people dream about doing in this world, and that they will want to play in it with their friends for a long time. Chris, I think if you deliver anywhere near what you've promised us, we're all going to be playing this game until you make your next one. Thanks for the passion that you put into your projects, Chris. On a side note, it is worth mentioning that Chris stated that the DFM needs to be fun. We're releasing something that a lot of people would consider a real live release, but it's a year and a half away from when you would normally be releasing it. So it looks like Star Citizen could push full release into 2016. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. That wraps it up for the RSI website recap. Let's see what happened on Wingmans Hangar this week. Right off the jump, Wingman lets us know that TNGS will not be back next week in order to give the team some time to enhance their models. First up, we get to see some full performance motion capture that's being done for the animations in the game. We learned that full performance capture means capturing 3 elements of an actor's performance, those being the body, the face, and their audio. One of the benefits of this is being able to adjust gestures and movements slightly in post, as well as taking the face capture and audio and even applying it to a totally different scene. From a director or editor's standpoint, these are amazing tools, and you can't do any of that stuff in live video like a movie. Everyone involved seemed to agree that it was tough and there were a lot of kinks, but that it turned out to be extremely successful and they learned a lot. I'm not sure this has ever been done in this way for a video game yet, and the way CIG employees talked about it, it kind of sounded like a pioneering effort in many regards. This was a test, and they're confident now that they can bring the actors in and get all the full performance captures done for everything they need. Full performance capture is now in the pipeline for development, and we will see it in Squadron 42 first. I'm excited to see this in the game. Eat your heart out, Rise. The interview with Brian Brewer, CIG's lead animator, was all about that motion capture system, and he showed off the Prime 41 cameras and the headpiece that they're using to capture this video and talked a bit more about the process. The MVP this week went to Zyphon for his thread Star Citizen Cafe, where you can find a whole lot of Star Citizen themed recipes for different foods and drinks. The fan focus went to our very own org mate, Anything FPS, and none other than Disco Lando himself for their buggy racing videos in a custom hangar created by Anything FPS. Thanks for the awesome entertainment, guys. As always, you can check out the MVP and the fan focus in the links down below in the Show More section. Let's do the forum feedback recap. As always, we have Wingman and Rob Irving answering questions. Can we get an update on female avatar progress? Rob says the situation with the female as of right now, the model is pretty much finished. They're working on her RSI spacesuit, and then we're going to be handing her off to Brian and his crew to get the motion capture and all the animation stuff done, and hair. Can you give more details on how autopilot will work? For example, how far will you have to be from objects or other ships to activate it, and will it follow waypoints or just go directly from point A to point B? Rob said autopilot is going to be your wing commander privateer style, where there's a set of nav points and your map, and you can autopilot to them from any location. You will eventually be able to put pins in the map for your own waypoints. As far as the disengaged distance goes, that's one of those things we'll figure out in game. You need to be out of combat to autopilot, but we don't know exactly how far you'll need to be. Will the NPCs be modeled to follow player trends with what ships and equipment they select, or will their behavior be independent of what's popular with players? Rob said NPCs are individuals. That's one of the things we're really stressing. They have their own goals and careers just like the players do. What they're going to look for are the ships they need to do their jobs just like the players do. In the case of people who have ships because they need to travel, there may be some trend following because the ships that are most popular will be manufactured the most. Will the mass of your cargo and ammunition, etc. affect the handling of ships? Rob said, yes sir, it's physics. If it's physics, Chris cares about it. I know the back end is less sexy, but can you tell us something about which database you are using and on what code the server component is based on? Rob said we're using a clustered Cassandra database, which is the back end, and we are using no SQL for those of you who are curious. We have seen many changes to the look and feel of the Hornet and Scythe since the original Squadron 42 trailer. Has the Bengal carrier had similar changes and upgrades to it, and will we be seeing it again soon? Rob said yes, the Bengal carrier is getting a pretty significant refit for Squadron 42. That's not one I would choose to use soon on. The first capital ship they're going to see that really unveils how capital ship systems are going to work is going to be the Idris. How many maps can we expect in the DFM? Rob said right now there are 2 maps. I think there's a Broken Moon map and I can't name the other one off the top of my head. And that will continue to expand, of course. But there's a bunch of different game modes that can be played on each map. That's really what's going to give you the variety, at least for now. There will be more coming. Then Eric chimed in and said, like Horde AI, Free Flight, Team Deathmatch, Last Man Standing, and possibly Capture the Flag. Let's move into 10 for the chairman and get some answers straight from Chris Roberts. For hiring NPCs, what degree of variation will there be? Will there be some that are better gunners or pilots, and if I pay him to sit in the gunner seat, will he get better at it? Chris said there will definitely be variations between NPCs. We'll have some level of skills for the NPCs, and probably there will be some progression for the NPCs as well. So if they fight a lot of battles and they manage to be on the winning end of them, then they will actually get better, and the cost of hiring the crew will be dependent on their skill level. So you can go for the cheaper crew, but they may not be as good as the veteran or elite crew. Is there a benefit to ejecting from your ship before it explodes? I know what I was thinking. I was thinking, yeah, you're not dead, that's the benefit. And Chris kind of said the same thing. Chris said, yes, not all ships will have that capability though. The Hornet and the 300i have it, but something cheaper like the Aurora does not have it. The benefit is that it sort of saves one of your lives, so to speak. Your medical bills will also be less. If you're curious about the lives thing, it's referenced in Death of a Spaceman, one of the lore posts for Star Citizen. It also represents how the death mechanic will actually work in the game. Are there any plans to let us design our own costumes for our characters? Chris said definitely on the modding side people will be able to. There will be a high level of customization in terms of outfits and stuff you can do for your character in the game. In the persistent universe, custom costumes would have to be moderated to make sure it abided by the quality and technical standards that we need. How do you define alpha testing? Does CIG consider us alpha testers? Chris said you will definitely be testing unfinished versions of the game because we're releasing the game in modules. The primary purpose of having the community play it is twofold. One, for people who play it and give us feedback in terms of this works or this doesn't, and 2, stress and bug testing. We have our own group of internal testers, but on a game this big with this many different things you can do, it's impossible to only test internally. When we are in a fight, will wreckage become a navigational hazard? Chris said yes, ships will leave large chunks of wreckage. They will not explode in a big fireball and then just go away. It could explode because you hit a power plant, or it could just be a sparking battle-scarred Hornet sitting there dead, and you'll have to watch out for it. If you hit it while you're flying around, it's going to do some damage to you. Will Star Citizen take advantage of 6 and 8 core CPUs and more than 8 or 16 gigabytes of RAM? Chris said yes, CryEngine already has multi-threading and runs the renderer in a separate CPU thread. It runs physics in several CPU threads and animations run in another. Main game loops in another thread, and then I also think we have networking in yet another thread. In general, the engine's already multi-threaded, and longer term we're working on adding and doing more of that. Memory, definitely. The more memory, the better. We'll be able to pre-cache more, and you'll have higher resolution textures. I would definitely recommend having a multi-core CPU and lots of memory. Will we be able to use inertia to move instead of using up fuel? Chris said yes, flight mode has a fully controlled flight, the IFCS. you will be able to change the flight mode so that you can change orientation without changing flight direction, and also change your direction without changing your orientation. Will jump points have a tendency to be near the edges of solar systems or star systems, or will there be dangerous points that come out near a star or an asteroid field? Chris said jump points are all over the place. Our fiction is that jump points are created by anomalies, and sometimes that could be close to a star or in an asteroid field. There will be different types of jump points that can sustain bigger ships or only take smaller ships. Will it be possible to rent ships from an NPC corporation or between players? Chris said probably. Potentially you can work for hire. You can hire another player or NPC to do jobs for you and let them just use your ship. You will definitely be able to lend ships to people, so it makes sense that you should be able to rent them to other players as well. That does it for the Q&A. Let's do some other news. First up in other news this week is a game that most of you have probably heard about or even played. It's called Space Engineers, and it's awesome. If you're behind the times a bit on this game, it's a physics-based space game where you can build ships and stations through crafting and placing the objects in space. You have to mine minerals, refine them, and then use an assembler to create parts that then go together to make your structures. The physics modeling in this game is really fun. When things crash into each other, you get real damage modeling from the impacts and deformation of your objects. For those of you that already know about this game, it just got a major update and it's now multiplayer. You can now host a game on your PC and play with up to 15 other people in a survival setting. People will spawn in a tiny ship with the basic necessities, and then you have to get out there and mine so you don't run out of resources and especially energy. If you run out of uranium to power your stuff, eventually your suit is going to run out and you will die a horrible death in space. I played the multiplayer of this for about 10 hours so far, and it is a blast. You can make an assault rifle for shooting folks when you're just in your spacesuit, and you can also equip your ships with armor and weapons for fights. Once this game gets dedicated server abilities, I will have to set one up for my friends and myself. It's just that fun. If you like mining, building, and horsing around in space with mostly realistic physics, you should definitely get this game. Another quick news bit for you guys coming straight from an official CIG employee posting on the forums is an update on the Retaliator. The size has been increased dramatically from 50 meters to an impressive 70.5 meters. That also comes with a statement saying that the interior of the ship is about 3 times more awesome now, with a lot more rooms. They also stated that the thrusters and engines have changed, and the ship now has 4 main thrusters and 6 VTOL maneuvering thrusters. If you want to read the whole thread, there's a link in the Show More section below. This week, the r/Star Citizen post of the week goes to not a thread starter, but to a reply from Nakara, who answered the question, in the last 4 months, what has happened? Her response is an amazingly organized post with links to everything that's happened since November of 2013. If you want to go through the list yourself, I'm linking you to the thread and you can check it out and leave her a comment thanking her for taking the time to make an awesome contribution to the community. Thanks a bunch, Nakara. And so we've come to the end of another week of want. A week of waiting for Star Citizen and hoping it will be everything we wish it to be. Without you guys, this show would not exist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next week on The Whole Truth. Goodbye.